I want to thank Claytia Gonsalves for joining me here today. It's our fourth alumni chat of fall 2021. Can't believe that we're at the fourth alumni chat so far. I'm Jackie Banks. I'm the Arts Media Communication Advisor here at Colley, and I want to thank all of you who are joining us today. And for those of you who are watching it, thank you for watching. So Claytia Gonsalves is a SMS graduate of Culture and Politics and is currently a staff writer at Disney Television Animation. So all of that sounds amazing. So tell us, Claytia, what does a staff writer at Disney Television Animation do?
In a nutshell, I make up stories and I'm paid for it. It's a pretty cushy job. It's very work from home friendly, I will say. I spend a lot of time typing. You spend a lot of time brainstorming in the shower, on long walks. You're literally just experiencing life and then writing those stories on the page. The fun thing about being and working in animation is that you can literally create anything, right? If you need or want something to suddenly appear, there's magic, there's effects, there are so many different elements that you can play with. And so I literally, I would categorize my job as, I'm a visual storyteller. And a bbig component of that is just being a writer and being somebody that's interested in the world around them.
So I know for you, you're doing the things, I think two things that I get a lot of questions on. One is writing. Mm-hmm. So it's that whole, how do I become a writer's assistant, showrunner? Like, what does that process look like? Mm-hmm. And the other is the entertainment industry. So you have both of those. So I guess maybe to start, maybe take me through college. And I mean, I see from your LinkedIn all the many things you did before you got here. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you started as a writer. You started, it looks like more behind the scenes, more business or marketing. So I don't know, like, I'm really curious, and I think everybody here too, what does that look like? How did you start? And how did you know writing? And anything that you can think of that would just lead us through your journey and that'd be helpful for students to hear who are interested in either writing or entertainment.
Okay. I will try to help my journey make sense. I believe I'm still figuring it out as well. I think that's the beauty of life, is that we're always constantly learning. But we're Georgetown students, so we can literally do anything, which is a blessing and a curse, right? So when I went to Georgetown, I wanted to become a diplomat. I wanted to travel the world, see other countries, kiss other people's babies. That was sort of the goal that I had for myself. I didn't know anything about Georgetown. I literally Googled school for foreign service, and Georgetown School of Foreign Service came up in my Google search. And that's how I applied and how I ended up at Georgetown. Somewhere during that time, taking macro econ classes and completely failing out of iFinance. Like I did did really poorly. I just started reassessing my interests, right? And there was something that I had always done. I was always writing. I'd always saw writing as a hobby. I'd done poetry at a very young age, read short stories. I definitely saw writing as a creative outlet that I would go to as sort of a crutch when I needed an escape, right? And so I ended up taking a playwriting course at Georgetown just for fun. And the professor, Christine Evans, this wonderful woman from Australia, beautiful accent. We would just be in workshop and she would just have us sit there and close our eyes and describe a tree on the front lawn and then write a story about that tree. And then it would just turn into and become this wonderful, deep meditative process, a deep creative process that at the time I wasn't actively nurturing. And so something in me sort of clicked where I realized that the thing that I was actively pursuing felt like the job that I thought that I needed to have. Whereas the thing that I was doing and the thing that I had been doing for such a long time as a hobby felt like the job that I could have been doing. And when they say, if you find a job that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I truly fundamentally believe that. I find myself working on weekends. And like I said, just like out walking and thinking about story ideas, like you really end up, becoming sort of enveloped in a space, that feels totally natural and totally like just inane to who you are as a person. And so that was what writing felt like for me. And so at that point, I wanted to sort of discover different, potential career opportunities, because I am first generation American. My parents are from the Caribbean. We don't play that. Like, you need to have a job, you need to have some income coming in, you need to have something to show for whatever passion and pursuit that you're following. And so I took a screenwriting class at Georgetown. I started acting. I was in the Performing Arts Center. Literally, I did everything: directing, producing, costume design, acting, you name it. I did it. And I really started to find my piece. And somewhere in there, right, I still had to graduate, get my degree. It was really too late to kind of switch out of the SFS and do anything crazy. But what I ended up doing was pursuing a COPE degree, which was the most flexible of the SFS degrees. And I was able to essentially parlay, a humanities with a sort of like film writing, creative writing, social sciences kind of component, so that I could take the classes that I thought that I wanted to take and sort of continue to nurture the hobby into a job, something real. After graduation, I ended up interning in Atlanta, and I was working at Turner. And if you don't know, Turner is responsible for like Cartoon Network, Adult Swim, TBS, TNT, Turner Classic Movies. Like they own a lot. And I was working actually on the corporate side and working in distribution. And somewhere in there, I was just taking informational meetings with literally anyone who would meet with me. And I met with a woman who worked in programming, and I was like, hey, I like this writing thing. I just don't know what to do with it. And she was like, well, if you want to write for TV, you should move to LA. And at that point, no one had ever said that to me, and I was like, what? I like Atlanta. It's nice here, Why would I just moved from DC. Why would I uproot and now move to LA? I've never been to LA. I don't know anything about LA. But, you're young. You got time, right? Nothing but passions. And so I did. I ended up driving cross country with my boyfriend and our dog to LA for a job interview, guys. I did not have the job, did not have an apartment, did not have anything, but I had an interview. So we hopped in the car Friday night, got into LA Monday morning. And when I tell you, it's like the most hours I've ever driven straight nonstop in my life. It was crazy. But there's just something about, feeling like you're so close, or feeling like you're on the precipice of something that really, I don't know what, but like that adrenaline rush moved me and kept me awake and really like motivated me to get here. And I literally changed into my interview clothes in a McDonald's parking lot, went in for my interview, and it was for a production assistant job on American Idol. Now, if anybody knows anything about being a production assistant, I will tell you, you do not need a college degree to be a production assistant, right? Your job duties include getting people coffee and saving the receipts and, decorating, J-Lo's trailer, how she likes it. And like it, things that you do not need a college degree for. Let's just put it like this. And so there was a moment in there where I kind of was second guessing myself, right? I was like, I didn't need to go to Georgetown for this. Let's just put it like that. But you live and you learn. And I learned that I do not like reality TV. So I left. But right, my passion was writing. So it didn't really match for me to be in reality TV as well. But it was a great sort of first step into the industry. And I had a friend who was working out here, who was working on another production that was, it was like reality, but it's faux reality. It was like a scripted faux reality show called Real Husbands of Hollywood. And they needed a writer's PA. So again, PA, you're getting lunches, coffees, all that fun stuff, but you're working with writers. And so for me, I was like, oh, that's a level up. I'll take it. That's awesome. What I will say, at this point, I was pregnant with my first child. And so I was running around grabbing Popeyes for the crew, like pregnant in all, maternity pants and all, like just hustling, right? And so what I will say about that is don't do that. Do not do that. A hustler mentality is great, but also like take care of yourself. I was clocking 10,000 steps a day. It was a lot. However, I did the job and I met some amazing people off of it. I had my baby and came back to work for the director of that series, who works in comedy and has been working in comedy for a very long time. And so I spent the next year and a half or two working as his assistant, as a director's assistant, and working in comedy. And so literally my job was to go into work every day and just laugh and to respond to other people just telling their jokes and bearing their soul and being super vulnerable on stage. And worked with literally probably every serious comedian that you can think of. I've likely met them and worked with them. And yeah, my job was just kind of cushy at that point. Like I'm driving my boss around in his Tesla. We're going to all the comedy clubs together. It was pretty cool. I was like, okay, I leveled up. I realized, wow, Claytia, like you really enjoy comedy. Maybe comedy is something that you should be pursuing, right? Underneath the umbrella of the entertainment industry, right? And so I started writing my own comedies, pilots, short stories, really anything that I felt like was moving me at the time. I shot my first short film, which was a romantic dramedy called Jealous, inspired by the Labyrinth song Jealous. I don't know if any of you guys know it, but oh my goodness, touched my heartstrings. I was like, I have to write something about this. And so I did. So I did my first short film that premiered out here in LA at an Academy qualifying festival, which is really great, really amazing opportunity. And for my first time as a filmmaker, it just spoke to just the passion that went behind the project and all of the voices that were involved. It just making a really amazing thing. And then after that, I started working at Code Black over at Lionsgate, and then Laugh Out Loud, which is Kevin Hart's company. And then I'm sort of like fast tracking here because there have been a lot of jobs. I've literally worked pretty much every aspect of production in the background of this side of the industry is. But the last job that I had prior to where I am currently, I was a showrunner's assistant. So the showrunner is the top dog, head honcho, top writer in the room. And so basically, you are there to make sure that their life is like easy peasy. You could be getting them coffee. Coffee is always on the table. LA people love coffee. I'm a tea drinker myself, but LA people love coffee. But you're also there to reread drafts, to proofread, edit. You're literally there to be an intelligent sound piece. You're there to bring in pop culture references and really help them understand what's going on in the world today. You're there for research. You're there to do coverage, which is basically like a book report on submitted material. So if someone sends in a script, you'll read it and you'll analyze it. I love this dialogue. This writer was really great at structure. Oh, this writer really pulled me in with their characters. You're just really giving your feedback and you're actually contributing to what could potentially go on the screen, what could potentially get picked up and made. Like it's a very coveted job. And so I worked as a showrunner's assistant for a little over a year. And then I got staffed and here we are. And so far, this is my favorite job that I've ever done. But yeah, there were a lot of inroads to get here. So I'm definitely, if you have any specific questions about like how I got to each of those places or about any of those roles or anything like that, I'm definitely down to answer those as well. I just kind of wanted to give an overview from Georgetown to now.
Oh no, that was super helpful because it's like what you ended with, there's lots of roads to get there. I think that's one of the main things that I hear from alumni, and after I've been in my role for going on 8 years. And so that is one of the things I hear all the time. There's no one path. And you have been at Georgetown, so you know that a lot of what students are seeing are industries with very clear paths, whether it's finance or consulting. And entertainment isn't like that.
Yeah. And I'm sorry. I wish it were. I wish I could say, yeah, all you have to do, just like law school, you go to this place and then you check in, you pay your fee, but it's really not. And so the best advice that you can get when pursuing an entertainment career is to just ask everyone what their path was. And then by listening to everyone's stories, you start picking up on the commonalities and the sort of like overall motifs of this is what these people did. And so maybe there's something in here, maybe there's a nugget here that could work for me. And that's literally what I did. So you can sort of map out your process in a way, like, okay, I know where my point A is and I know where my point B is. I don't know exactly the points along the way, but if you come into it with a rough sort of map like that, you will eventually get to where you're going. You might, zigzag a little bit here and there, but I would say, just speaking to Georgetown students, because I'm not saying this, I don't say this for everyone. I don't, I feel as though Georgetown students just tend to have just a little bit of everything that you need to survive in this industry, which is that hustle, that drive, that energy, that adrenaline, that focus, but also just the idea that you care for people other than yourself, right? That really is going to get you very far in this industry, because it is an industry that's based on relationships. And if people don't like you, they're not going to help you. And if you don't like someone, you're not going to help them either. And so it's really important, I would say, from sort of like a career perspective. A lot of it is, there are very tangible skills that you do need to have. Like, you need to be analytical, you need to be thoughtful, you need to be present, you need to be timely, all of these things. But there are also just basic skill, like people skills, like be a nice person and like smile and say good morning. Those little things go a long way, especially when people are working 12 to 14 hours on productions all day. It's very exhausting. And so people are hiring people that they like and that they want to spend more time with than they spend with their families, right? It really is that important.
That's also a common theme I've heard, is that, you're going to be with people for a very long time in one space, and you've got to be nice enough to want to be in that space with that person. So I see, Claytia, there's some questions that came in. I don't know did you want to hold them into the end, or do you want to address them as we go? Because I have other questions, but I'm flexible.
We can address as we go. I'm all for that. Okay, I just pulled it up. Can you talk a little bit about how you got this latest role, how you ended up at Disney, and how you ended up in animation? Thanks, Claytia. Thank you, Billy. Yeah, sure. I will say that it is very difficult to get staff. And I mean that in like the nicest way possible. I've once heard statistics that you're more likely to get into the NFL as a professional footballer than you are to be a staff TV writer. This is not to dissuade anyone at all, because I'm sure the statistics of getting into Georgetown are probably similar. Like you're used to, and you should be used to, right? A very competitive world, right? If you're doing something that's like not as competitive, I don't know, maybe it's not worth it. I don't know. I'm one of those people that very much enjoy, if you tell me that something is difficult or very hard to do, it motivates me. And so hopefully that was motivating to you future writers as well. But I will say the specific job. So I had an agent and a manager, and my agent would just send me out around town. And so you, as a writer, you would have, a couple of samples in your portfolio that fit different shows. So you might have a multicam, which is like you might have a multicam sample, which is basically like a sample for a show like The Upshaws, or I'm trying to think of multicams. I don't know why I'm blanking, but basically the shows that shoot with the studio audience, and there used to be a laugh track, like that essence. Those are the multicam shows. And then you might have a show that represents, you as a dramedy writer, right? A sample that represents you as a dramedy writer. You might have something like a Fleabag, or, something a little bit deeper that showcases you as like a drama writer, like a I May Destroy You, whatever it is that you are interested and passionate about, those are your samples. Your agent will send your samples to different shows when they are staffing. So they will read your materials, and if they like what they've read, then they'll meet with you. And so you're meeting with the showrunner or showrunners, plural, for whatever show is hiring. And what I will say is, when even getting to that point is like, great, pat yourself on the back, because what they've said is, we've read your writing and we think that you're a great writer. So whether you get the job or not, just meeting with that showrunner at that point could be an opportunity for you in the future. It could be them recommending you, maybe not for their show, but for another show that they're familiar with, right? The industry is very insular, right? And so when I met with the showrunner and show creators for the show that I'm on, I was like, okay, they've read my material, they like my writing. I just have to go in here and like literally just not be crazy. Do not be a crazy person that they're like, oh my gosh, I can't see myself working with this person for hours on end. Literally, that's the only requirement of that meeting. And so for this specific show, it was still in development. It's a brand new show. It's called KIF, which means cool in South Africa. Our show creators are from South Africa. And so they wanted, this sort of like fun, diverse room. And okay, diversity requirement, right? Cool. However, you still have to come in and be fun and interested in the material and interesting, right? So you're talking about your personal stories, and I was able to see part of the pilot. It was on lockdown completely. I had no sort of research that I could do prior to that meeting. So we watched the pilot together in that meeting. And then right after watching it, the pilot is the first episode. So we watched the first episode together in that meeting. And then they were like, so what do you think? And I had to have thoughts. So, a big part of how did you get the job? It's literally like just interview skills, right? Like how responsive are you to someone asking questions? How can you sort of tap into the experiences that you've had, and how can you bring those into the room and sort of showcase that you are like a value add and that they would be blessed to have you, right? How do you show that in a very authentic and vulnerable way? And so literally that's how I got the job. I had someone, one of the execs over at Disney, who was rooting for me, and she was like, I just want to get you on one of our shows, any show, I don't care. And so, you end up making those relationships along the way, and it worked out. I met with the showrunner and the show creators, and they're all just really great, really wonderful people. And our humor sort of meshed in a really great way. And they ended up reaching out to offer me the job. Now, there were there were 4 writers that they hired for this show. So once again, when you're thinking about numbers, hundreds of people apply, they read their scripts, they whittle that down, they meet 20, 30 people, they whittle that down, and then they hired 4. So that's just to give you an idea. Sometimes it's not even you, like why you didn't get the opportunity. It's just there are only so many spots. And so it really has to just be a good fit. And so I would say I also got the job because of God, because honestly, I prayed about it and I was like, God, please put me in a room with wonderful, lovely, nice people. I don't know how many of you guys follow the industry and the trades, but a lot of negative press has been coming out lately about showrunners, crazy producers throwing potatoes at assistants, like crazy stuff, right? I've never had a potato thrown at me, but I will say I've had some very interesting experiences. And so my sort of mantra was like, I don't want to be in a crazy room with crazy people. Like, I just want to be with good people who just have good energy and who are just going to kind of vibe well together. And so I will say it was a lot of stars aligning at the same time. And once again, I was ready to be staffed. I was working on my material, really serious about my writing, really serious about contributing and being on that side of the industry, being behind the scenes and creating, story worlds. And so it just linked up in a really great way. So thank you, Bailey, for the question. I hope I answered questions. I hope I answered them. Emma, you said, I would enjoy hearing about what a writer's room looks like, okay, and how you developed your own voice / work. Okay, great. So writers' rooms vary. It depends on your show's budget and how much pull your showrunner has as to how many writers are going to be in the room. So like I mentioned, there are 4 writers in our room. Our showrunner is also a writer, and one of the 2 show creators is also a writer, but they're sort of like optional writers, right? So they can write if they want to, but really the most of the work is meant to be taken up by the 4 writers that they hired for the room. We also have a writer's apprentice in our room. So he is essentially 1 level below a writer, but 1 level above a showrunner's assistant. So he'll get like 1 or 2 episodes to write during our season. And we have to write 40 episodes, 40 11-minute episodes over the season. So it's a lot of work to be shared. But that's sort of that's our room. And then we also have a script coordinator who's in our room, and she literally does everything else. Typically that job would be managed by 2 people. So it would be a script coordinator and a writer's assistant. However, she's kind of just like a jack of all and does everything. So she's our liaison with the Disney execs. She takes notes in our meetings. She does, small research for us. She creates spreadsheets, just everything else, really. But that's specific to our writer's room. I've been in other writer's rooms where you'll have 8 writers, including the showrunner. And there's always a hierarchy in the room. So that is one thing to take note. There's always a sort of newbie writer, and it's not about age, it's about experience. So you can have a newbie writer who's, early 20s, just got out of college, or you can have a newbie writer who's like 40s, 50s, has a lot of lived life experience. It's really about how many years have you written in TV? And so that's your first slot. You come in as a staff writer. And then after that, there's a difference between working in animation and live action. And so the live action rooms you tend to move up a level with every season of TV that you've written for. And so even if you're in a room and you've only written 1 episode that season, the next season, if you come back to that room, you'd likely get a bump in title and money. But you could also potentially go to a different show, get a bump in title there. And so that's sort of how it works. And then you just keep on moving on up, hopefully. You continue to do good work. And then you become a showrunner of your own. I think most people, that's what they aspire to be. And like I said, as a showrunner, you're like the top dog. You're managing millions of dollars worth of stuff, of people, of everything. People are coming to you and asking you, what color shirt should Claytia wear in scene 5? And you have to have an answer. Like, you're very much the sort of master puppeteer of the show. And so if the show does well, it falls on you. If the show does poorly, it also falls on you. So that's pretty much like how a writer's room looks. I don't want to go too much into detail because, like I said, it does vary, but you're looking at a room full of writers, some support staff, and then you have the sort of the head, the top dogs who are writers, but they also produce and manage the show. Okay. All right. Jaritza, you said, hi, Claytia. Thank you so much for speaking with us. Oh, you're welcome. I was wondering if you could tell us about your experience as a woman of color making your way up the industry ladder. Sure. I am obviously a woman of color. And so, when you show up in a room, people have certain expectations for you, about you, prior to you even opening your mouth. And so I would say, I've kind of used that to my advantage, right? I think people expect you to be sort of like, I think people expect women of color to kind of like have everything together and just kind of like be the doers and the idea people and like all of these things. And it's a lot of pressure. And so what I do, and what's worked for me is kind of coming in and being very specific about like what my role is and what my what the expectations are for me. I think one thing about women of color, I think especially as a first gen American, like you kind of want to help everybody. So you start like taking on other people's responsibilities, and you start sort of like stretching yourself thin and not knowing when to say no, and all of these things that unfortunately you think you're being like a great, wonderful human being, but deep down inside, you're literally, you know, waging a war against yourself. Right. And so the one thing about, and I'll say that this feels like a very specific sort of woman of color experience, is I just, you know, had to remind myself at some point, like, you cannot be everybody's everything. Right. Especially when, you know, at the end of the day, if you're the strong friend for everybody, like who's being strong for you, right? And so I was very intentional about also just like keeping a group of friends around me that I felt were also sort of supportive, really intelligent, also Georgetown women of color. Sorry. You know, good people find good people, but you know, just making sure that there was a group of people who I felt like, you know, intellectually understood who I am and what I was going through, and that I could sort of like have these conversations with that were outside of the industry, so that they could sort of give their perspective from, you know, from their sort of POV, which wasn't being filtered through sort of the entertainment, you know, bias that I now have and had, right? I will say that you, as a woman of color, will always be climbing a ladder. Sucks. I don't believe we've arrived at a place where, you know, where it's just like, okay, we can just call Auntie Shonda and she's just gonna send that ladder back down and everything's gonna be great. You know, the fact that there is a Shonda Rhimes, the fact that there is and Ava DuVernay, right? Like the fact that we still have one or two examples of Issa Rae, Michaela Cole, oh my goodness, I could just go through a whole list. But the fact that we only have one or two examples of people who have essentially made it, who have climbed to the top of the ladder, who have just, you know, done the damn thing. For me, it's like we're still, there's just still so much to be done, and we have to keep climbing. And so I tell people all the time, like, and as you guys know, I've done a lot. I've had a lot of jobs. I've been in this industry now for about 6 years. But I tell people that I'm at the first rung of this very tall ladder, right? I don't know if the ladder's getting longer. I don't know if someone's adding pegs. I don't know what's going on, but I fundamentally believe that like being a woman of color is like a blessing and a curse. And so, you know, take it as you will. But I think the best thing that you can do for yourself is just to remember to make and take time for yourself, and whatever self-care you need to do to make sure you're good before walking into work. You know, like do that thing, because I just find that it's so important to make sure that you're good before you try to help others. So put your mask on first, ladies of color, before anyone else's. Ashley says, not a question. Just wanted to thank you for sharing with us. I have to leave early. Oh, okay, cool. So Ashley, we'll see. We have shouted you out. Thank you so much for the kind words.
And Claytia, that's my stuff in there, because I was like, if we just keep going on and on, I wanted you to just touch on a few things, but I can jump back in now because I think we're done with the questions.
Yes, I think we are. So
keep going, guys, though. Like, I'll ask questions that are more basic, because I know that's what people are coming in for. So on this call and watching, there'll be people at the very beginning. And for those of you that are juniors or seniors, you probably already have a sense of like where you're going. So I'm asking the more entry level ones. For those of you that are a little bit further on the process, you know, feel free to add some more things to the chat. We'll try to cover it, because we've been going pretty fast. Mm-hmm. So I think we'll get there. So you mentioned back when you were at Turner. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go back to Turner. You said that you did a lot of informational meetings. Mm-hmm. So that's usually the bane of students' existence, is the networking word and all of that. So I guess maybe touch on networking and informational interviews in the industry, and why, you know, why do them?
Sure. First of all, I don't like the term networking. I think it's a dirty term. We should stop using it. Because it's now become a sort of like, how can this person help me term? And I think it's, it's use has just been messy over the past couple of years. So what I like to call it is relationship building. And if you think of it as relationship building, your life will be.
I just have to butt in there. I call it the same thing. Anyway,
okay, great.
Go on.
Great.
The same thing.
So everyone listen to Jackie because she knows all things. I fundamentally believe that you can only have sort of like this network if you have relationships with people, right? And if you are intentionally looking to build a relationship with people. And so I will say, I don't like going to events where you have to like, all right, let me see how many business cards I can get. And let me go up to 3 people in exchange. Like that all of that feels so forced, and it feels so inauthentic, and it feels so like perfunctory and performative. And I'm just like, for me, I'm just like, oh man, they're gonna totally see through me, and they're gonna see like I'm a fraud. I'm walking up to this person because I think they might be able to do something for me, and they're gonna tell, and I'm a horrible liar. And that's literally what goes through my head before these events. So what I will say, if you think about it as relationship building, and you think about informational meetings as like a first date with a potential friend or somebody who just has a life experience that's different from you, right? If you think about people as sort of topics of study, and I know this sounds really weird, but I'm sure everyone in this room has people watches. Like, I don't know if you actively do it or whatever. I do it all the time, right? So you're looking at someone and you're like, okay, she's wearing purple shirt. It's a fun color. She might be a nice person, right? Or like, okay, she has on, orange nail polish. Love the color, right? There's just something about someone's energy or aura or vibe, whatever you call it, that is attractive, right? And so that's what I look for when I'm just like, oh, like who should I meet? Especially in these scenarios when you have to go to these events and whatnot, and you're supposed to be talking to people. So you people watch, you pick up on vibes. I once met this woman at an event at Disney. Once again, vibes. I just looked across the room and I was like, she seems like we could be friends, right? That's what you're thinking. I'm like, who do I feel like I could have a good conversation with? And we ended up having the same haircut, which was not this. I had a mohawk or something at the time. And she ended up actually coming over to talk to me because I guess she was like picking up on the same vibes. And we literally spent the entire day together at the networking event. Didn't network with anyone else but each other, which is fine. Once again, relationship building. It's not about quantity. It's about quality. So we spent the entire event together, and now she's one of my really great friends. She's a director, she's a writer, she just got staffed on her own show. We're in like writers group together, like all of these things. And a lot of those opportunities literally came from, I like her here and she has a nice vibe. So when I think about, networking and, the reality is I don't really know what networking is going to look like nowadays post COVID. Like, are people shaking hands anymore? Like, it just kind of feels like it's going to be a different space. But what I will say is, if you just go into every interaction like it's just like a first date, and you're just trying to get to know that person, and you're trying to find commonalities, you're trying to find things about them that are interesting that you can also sort of like jump off of and springboard off of, you'll be fine. When I went out for informationals, I was emailing people at the company that had interesting job titles. And I was like, oh, I don't know what programming is. Let me message this person and ask them, right? And the fun thing about doing that, one, it's a mixed bag. You don't know what you're going to get, but a lot of people enjoy talking about themselves. Like, if you just kind of get them on a roll. Yeah. So like, tell me about college, or tell me like, how did you end up here? What have you? And then you just listen. Right. And they say something like, oh yeah, I went to Georgetown undergrad. And you're like, So did I. Like, you'd be surprised how many like very simple commonalities you start to develop and discover with other people. And so I will say, just specifically for the informationals, yeah, if you get like sweaty hands, if you're nervous, try to have a couple of things about yourself that you think are really interesting or fun or sort of at least good conversation starters, and then go from there. And like I said, just listen, treat it as a first date. There are no expectations. You don't have to kiss at the end of the night. Like, it's very much relaxed. And if you think about it in that way, I think, you know, informational and networking and all of that is going to be a lot easier. And assume that like maybe they're awkward too. Like, give everyone the benefit of being awkward until proven otherwise, right? Because you don't know. Some of the most confident looking people that I've ever met are often very shy. And you don't know until you talk to them. So yes, okay, I'm happy that helped.
So I had maybe two more things I wanted to ask. I want to get to Bailey's question on animation. So I'm going to put my stuff out there. One, LA, New York. I often get questions from students. I'm interested in writing, interested in entertainment. Which way should I go? And so that's one thing. And I suppose the other thing, it's a lot more to unpack, but I'm thinking industry trends, industry challenges, or hard truths. Okay. You know, anything like, so that would maybe something an ending question. So it's like, cool. We'll see where we go with like the LA, New York, maybe go to Bailey's question, and then we'll end with that monster.
I love doing this like I'm a Secret Service.
She's reading my lips.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm having a hard time hearing. I'm also congested and sick, so it's probably all of these things. So yeah. What'd you say, Jackie? 24. Okay, great. So I will say LA, New York. If you want to write for TV, LA. If you want to write for late night, like John Oliver, Trevor Noah, those things, New York. But every other TV thing is LA. If you want to write for theater, if you want to write plays and all of those things, New York. It's very simple. It's literally as cut and dry as I just said it. Once you are big things popping, however, you can live wherever you want. And so that's what you're aspiring to do, right? Because for a lot of people, LA doesn't really sort of like sit well with their core. And I'm one of those people. Like, as you can see, I am in a book nook in like Switzerland or something. Like, if I could live somewhere where it's just green and just like happy and like all these things, look at all this space. You don't have this in LA. I live in an apartment. Okay. And the same thing for New York. You know, it's very congested. It's very small. I was born in Brooklyn. I know that space as well. But I will say, you know, you have to, at least at the very beginning, get your boots wet, get your boots on the ground in either LA or New York, and then go from there. Like I mentioned, I was in Atlanta. A lot of people like to call Atlanta Hollywood East. That is not true. A lot of the above the line roles, so your directors, your producers, your writers, and what have you, are still being brought in from LA. Actually, like Michael B. Jordan shot something in Atlanta, or not in Atlanta, in Philly, and flew his assistant out from LA to Philly. Like, people are still coming from those main hubs. And so the only real jobs that you're going to get if you are local to an Atlanta or Louisiana or some of the other places where production is happening would be your below the line jobs. So if you want to do, if you're like a gaffer, if you're interested in like lighting, that's those type of things, or if you're interested in like sound and you want to walk around the boom mic and like do that sort of stuff, those are the jobs that you would get being local to those places. But everyone else is still very much brought in from LA or New York. Okay, Bailey's question was, did you always want to get into animation? I'm really interested in animation, but I hear there are challenges in the genre. I think lower pay, maybe, yes. And it's harder to move out of animation if you want to later. Do you have thoughts on that? Yes, I have so many thoughts. First of all, yes, I actually moved out here to work in animation. I wanted to write for kids animation. I am a giant child at heart. I'm also 5'3", so I probably do look like a child in real life. When I moved out here, I met with someone who worked at Cartoon Network. And Cartoon is a storyboard driven network. So basically, their writers tend to be their storyboard artists. And so I was told that, you probably have to know how to draw to write for animation. That was incorrect information because not every show is a storyboard driven show. However, I did take a nude drawing class in Burbank just to try it out, just to see if I had any skill, and not for me. So I am a writer, writer at heart. You do not need to know how to draw to work in animation, to be a writer in animation. And I think that some of the other stuff that you brought up, Bailey, is very much true. I will say that the people that you work with in animation are some of the nicest people that you will ever meet in the industry. They are by far just people who still have that sort of kid energy. They still have that sort of like naive positivity about them. And so, yes, you do make less money working in animation in comparison to working in live action. However, your happiness, you make enough money to be okay, right? Working as a writer, it's good money. It definitely is. But also the difference between the two, right? A lot of people who work in live action, well, you can read the industry trades, the deadlines of the world and the varieties, and you'll see there are a lot of shows that just have very difficult things going on in the background. We can talk about the challenges because this definitely ties into that question, Jackie. But I have yet to meet any sort of like really mean or like negative sort of like dark cloud in the animation industry thus far. So I can say that much. In terms of moving out of animation, I will let you know. I have heard this as well. I've heard that once you get started in animation, that it really is difficult for you to jump into live action and to go back and forth. However, if you guys have learned nothing about me in the last 45 minutes, you know I like a good challenge. And so I fully fundamentally intend to jump back and forth, and I intend to do it gracefully. And so we will see. But what I will say is there are no real hard, fast rules. One thing about writing for animation is that you do not get a script fee for every script that you write. So what that means is you get paid for being in the room. Whether you write 1 script or 10 scripts, you paid your salary for being in the room. When you're working in live action, you get paid for being in the room, and you also get paid for the output, right? So the script that you created that is now going to be on TV. The thing about working in animation and not getting paid for every script is that they're like, oh, you want 10 scripts? Take 10 scripts, right? So I'm already on my 3rd script in animation. And that's because, oh, hold on one second. I'm already on my 3rd script in animation. And literally that's because they're like, well, we don't have to pay you extra. So like, how many scripts do you want? And so by the time I'm done with this room, I will have written between 8 to 10 scripts. And as a staff writer, whereas someone in live action might get a script, might get a co-written by on a script. It's just not promised because they then have to be paid on top of what they're already being paid, right? And especially at the staff writer level, you're not promised a script. And if you do write a script at the staff writer level, actually in live action, you're not paid for it. You're paid at the next level. So in actuality, it's better, and maybe I'm just saying this because I work in animation, but whatever, I'm biased. I think it's actually better to start in animation for that reason alone, and that I am writing a lot. And so my next job, when I go in for my interviews and they're like, yeah, so why should we hire you? Why should we bring you in the room? And I can say, well, I've written, 100 pages of TV, and I'm on rung number 1, right? And so that is something to think about as you're qualifying, like, do I do animation? Do I do live action? Like, which way should I go? The other thing that I will say really quickly is that it is difficult to move back and forth. However, there are so many more people who are doing it now that a lot of people are starting to sort of open their minds up to the fact that you can write, you can be a comedy writer and also do a drama, or you can be someone like a Craig Mazin and write The Hangovers and then come and do Chernobyl. Like, people are starting to break out of the traditional boxes of like what type of writer you are. And so I think because of that, it's actually going to be easier to move back and forth. I'm the type of person, I work in the kids animation room and I watch Criminal Minds. Like, we as people are multifaceted. And so I think as if you are able to, and if your samples showcase you in that way, then going back and forth is going to be a no-brainer. But like I said, I will let you guys know when I secure my next job. I'm in this room until about July of next year, so we'll see. Okay, perfect. You are welcome. Okay, you want to hit me with the
Well, I'm looking at the time, and I hear your little human in the background. I'm assuming that's your little human.
I do have a little. I forgot to mention him. He was being so quiet. I literally forgot he existed. But I have a newborn, who's like between 2 and 3 months. He's just like a little fat boy, and he woke up, and so I started crying. So that was me being like, hubby, grab the baby. But that's a good.
Maybe just any closing words or anything like if I said industry or advice or anything that you want to kind of end on.
Yeah, well, what I was going to say just in general about your question about challenges, I think that every workforce has its challenges. The thing about the entertainment industry is that everybody knows everyone, or everyone knows someone who knows someone, right? And so I've heard it in both like a positive way and also sort of a threatening way. So I will also just share that with you guys as well, is that you never know who you know, or you never know who knows you. And you take that as you will. I think it is an industry of like, people are watching you, right? People are constantly sort of like wanting to see what this person is doing and how they're operating and all of that stuff. And so I like to operate as if, like if your real life is like your Twitter feed, like, what are you worried about what people would find out about you? Like, are you comfortable in the person that you're presenting yourself as? Like, are you a nice person? Are you genuine? Like, people can sort of like pick up on that. And so that's the takeaway thing that I would say, is just in terms of challenges, like, be very mindful about the person who you are and who you want to be, and try to stay as close to that as possible, because there are people who come into and enter this industry for very superficial reasons. You will know them. They're very easy to spot. And I would just say to avoid them at all costs, and trust your intuition. My intuition has really guided me. And I've been in some really, horrible sort of like stress inducing, like PTSD inducing type situations. But as you can see, I'm still smiling. And that's because like I do the self-work of being like, okay, this is not a good place for me to be. I need to move. I need to get out of here. Right. So I will say, don't kill yourself trying to like achieve your dream. There are enough good people in the industry. You don't need to, like lag behind the bad ones with the hope that some trickle down kindness will fall upon your lap, because usually those people are in power and have been in power for a reason, is that they stomp on people like us with dreams, right? So I want to leave on a positive note, though, because I don't want you guys to think that they are just all these monsters in the industry. But know that monsters exist. Monsters are real. They do not live under your bed. They are people. And so just be mindful of that as you're trying to navigate your career, your life, the world, right? And I will say, if you want to be a writer, you just have to write. Literally, that's it. And I don't think you need to write every day. Like I said, a big part of writing is just sort of like being and experiencing life, and like going for walks and like seeing how other people are and how they carry themselves and what's important and what motivates people. Like all of those things come into your writing. And then like make a list of really interesting names, because you'll always be naming characters and you'll always get to a point where you're like, oh man, what should I name this person? And then you're like, oh, Jaritza is such a great name. And then now you have a character named Jaritza and you can go on with your life. So just keep your eyes open. As a writer, eyes open, keep your laptop nearby, your notebook nearby, and you will do wonders in this industry.
That's a great note to end on.
Mm-hmm.
But the non-monster one.
The non-monster.
Non-monster.
But now we're back to monsters.
Now we're back.
Look
now
at my book nook, guys. Just look at the book nook and be happy.
It's peaceful. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for all your wonderful questions. Sometimes people don't ask, but it's so wonderful when you all participate. So I'm really grateful and thank you so much.